Welcome to another episode of the I'm F.I.N.E podcast, where a couple of knuckle-dragging veterans unpack the world of mental health as unprofessionally and informally as possible. I'm Peterson.
And I'm Brad Stosiek.
And today's episode is about leadership. We're going to talk about what leadership is, the difference in leadership between the military and civilian world, the different types of leadership, the psychological effects of leadership, burnout, ways to mitigate that burnout, and advice for aspiring leaders with our friend, President and CEO of the Manteno Chamber of Commerce, Jakob Knox. So sit back and relax as we do our best to take you from being freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to truly being fine about leading the pack.
Welcome to the I'm F.I.N.E podcast with your freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional hosts, Peterson and Brad Stosiek.
Thanks for being here, Jake.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. Ashley was the one that suggested you, and I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect, because I was typing up the outline months ago. We do our episodes with lots of time.
Oh, yeah.
We are very smart.
We have the next 15 planned out.
Oh my God. How we prepare stuff. It was last night, and I was doing the outline on leadership. And I was trying to think of different people. And now with my mind, especially in our world and the veteran world, there's so much out there about leadership.
Yeah.
And it's all done through the lens of high speed special operations types in the military. Again, which is totally fine. Definitely has a place. Super needed. But that's not... I don't know. I think there's enough of that out there where if you're curious and you want to learn more about that, you can check any of that stuff out. I wanted to have a conversation about what it's like being a leader in our world, because I'm not in the special operations community. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And to talk to somebody who I also thought had experience with that, which in my opinion is Jakob. So before we go any further, Jakob, would you mind talking a little bit, giving us a little bit about your backstory and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is year 2 of the job. My official title is I'm the president and CEO of the Manteno Chamber of Commerce, and then the marketing and community relations director for the village of Manteno. So kind of a dual role there, if you will. And
a lot to put on a business card.
It is. But I mean, the beauty of the role is I get to work hand in hand with the community, from community relations, the residents, putting on all those events and all that fun stuff. And then I also get to work with the business side as well. So not-for-profit organizations, small business, big business, everything in between. So it's definitely a lot, but I love it. Not sure how I'm still standing most days, but I mean, it's definitely a very, very fulfilling role. So
is this one of your first, because it's definitely a leadership position? You know what I mean? In a lot of different ways. Is this your first experience being in a leadership position? Because you're a younger dude, and this is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, so this is the official first leadership position that I've been in. I don't know if you count a team lead at Target, but
anything, yeah.
Yeah, this sector and this specific role though too is my first full run with the whole leadership side of things. And it's a lot, I mean, a lot of it has been a self-taught thing, learning from other leaders around me, learning from people that I've been impacted by, and just being very receptive. I feel like on both ends too, from the business side and community side. So it's definitely been a lot, but it's been very rewarding too.
Well, and that's why I wanted to have you on here, because I've told you this multiple times. I genuinely think that you are doing a really good job. And I feel like it would be hard for a lot of people at a younger age to take a leadership position like yours, to have the responsibilities that you have, and to be able to do a good job with it. So I thought that it would be really cool to get your perspective on a lot of this too. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of dive in the conversation here and unpack all the fun stuff that comes with it. So.
Absolutely. So before we get any further, Bradley, can you list our sources for this episode, please?
Sure can. McKinsey.com, the Harvard Business Review.com, History.com, and VantageCircle.com.
Very good.
Very good, Brad.
Very good, Bradley. You did a wonderful job.
Thanks.
I also just think it's important to talk about the difference between leadership in the military and the civilian world, because that was something that I really had to get used to.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I learned what it was in the military, and a lot of those carry over into the civilian world, but not all of them.
Oh.
And so, again, I like having both perspectives, you know? So the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I define leadership. Now, obviously, we all know that leadership is leading people, but I wanted like a little bit better of a definition. So what I found, and the definition that I like the most, is that leadership is a set of behaviors used to help people align their collective direction, to execute strategic plans, and to continually renew an organization. All leaders, to a certain degree, do the same thing. Whether you're talking about an executive, a manager, sports coach, school teacher, squad leader, platoon sergeant, whatever, leadership is about guiding and impacting outcomes. It's about enabling groups of people to work together to accomplish what they could not do working individually. In this sense, leadership is something you do, not something you are. It is their actions, not their words, that inspire trust and energy. So I think, first, before we get into what it is in the civilian world, I didn't have experience in the garrison world in the military.
Yep.
Was there much of a difference in leadership between time in garrison and like when you were out of the country?
What do you mean by difference?
I mean, so I think about it in terms of like deployment, like what I looked for in my leaders when I was deployed. And it was the ones that knew what they were talking about. Administratively, on paper, they might not be the best.
Oh, yeah. That's the exact same in garrison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like one of my best leaders, his name was Sergeant Workman. Sergeant Workman, you couldn't understand a fucking word that this dude said. Every time he talked, it was like a cartoon character. Okay. So he had been busted down in rank twice, which in the civilian world, it's like if you get promoted to manager, knocked back down to an employee, and then promoted to manager again. Like that happened to him twice. One for, I think, I'm not going to get into the details, but he got busted down in rank twice, okay? This guy, so on paper, one would see, okay, he did this and did that, whatever. I'm not, he doesn't look like leadership material because of these things that he's done, these things that he's done wrong or whatever. But he knew every single thing about the M60 and the 240 Bravo, every weapon system we used, everything. He knew all of it. And he would make us do drill after drill after drill until we knew everything about it. So like as a leader, he was phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? And in a deployment sense, he ended up not deploying with us. But I mean, in that type of environment, that was the type of leader I wanted, not the one that just looked good on paper. You know what I mean? Do you think it changes much when you get into the civilian world?
In the civilian world?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do.
How so?
I just feel like leaders, a whole lot of with them going on. What's in it for me?
Say that?
With them?
I've never heard that before.
Really?
With them?
What's
in it for me? I like that. Okay.
Yeah. So there's like a lot of that. So I feel like they don't really look out like, this is how you do your job. And that's kind of the extent of it. Whereas like in the military, if something, you need to talk to your leader about something, you can easily, I'm not saying you can't do that in the civilian side, but I just feel like there's a lot more of it in the military.
I felt like it was a lot more cutthroat when I got back in the civilian world, for sure. Do you remember what was your first experience with leadership after the military?
My first experience with leadership?
Yeah.
Or like me as a leader?
Either, both.
So me as a leader was, I managed a crew of high school kids at Wendy's.
Yeah. Were you also a high school kid?
No, this is just right out of the military.
This is when you got out of the military.
Yeah,
so you were in your mid 20s?
Yeah, I was like 23, early 20s, 23.
Okay. What was that like? It
was
herding cats.
They just like didn't care. They like, I tried to do like the cool corporal, like, I'm, if you need me type in this dude.
Anytime you try to be cool, not just you as a Brad, I'm saying anybody. Whenever I feel myself like I need to try to be cool, I'm like, no, I don't.
Cool, bro.
Right. It's going to be way worse. It's going to make it way worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
But no, so they just like didn't care. They didn't work as hard. I don't know.
Did you go into it with the military mindset as far as like how to be a leader and then watch it backfire? Because that's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because when I stopped going overseas, like I remember one of my first jobs, I worked in a warehouse, and I would get, as a leader, my whole thing is like, you're not going to work any harder than me. Because I feel like that's what I need to, as a leader, I feel like I got to set the tone. And I always appreciated leaders that did that. So like I was working as hard as I could in that warehouse to get the job done, not to work to a time. I was there to get a job done, and I would get the job done. And everybody else on the team had an issue with that because I was working too hard and doing too much. And I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? How do you not like, don't we all have the same mission? And then I realized, oh no, we don't have the same mission. Because in the military, it's a little bit easier in that everybody's supposed to have the same mission. We're all working towards the same thing. You know what I mean? But now it's like, well, no, you're my leader, and you have, in the civilian world, sometimes it's like you have your own prerogative. You have your own goals that you're trying to do unbeknownst to me. And I think I'm doing the right thing, but I have no idea, because really you're looking out for maybe yourself or the company over your team or whatever the case may be. And it just gets kind of super dicey. Anyway, so Brad, before we talk more about that, can you talk about the different styles of leadership, please?
Yeah, there's coercive. It entails demanding immediate compliance. Authoritative is about mobilizing people toward a mission. Pace setting involves expecting excellence and self-direction. Affiliative. It centers around building emotional bonds. Democratic, which involves creating consensus, and coaching, which focuses on developing people for the future.
I like how I always get to make the joke, and I'll always make it, about how the fact that you have trouble reading has nothing to do with the fact that you're blind, and everything to do with the fact that you're a Marine.
All right, I'll take it.
But for a blind Marine, you're fucking killing it at reading.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome. So those are the types. So I wanted to get into it a little bit more. The first one he listed, coercive. So coercive is the least effective to do. It is the do as I say type attitude approach. It might lead to short-term results, but studies show it can have a corrosive effect long-term on organizations and their culture, leading to high turnover rates and employees who don't care about their work. It can be beneficial in a crisis where swift decision-making and a chain of command is needed. So yeah, authoritative, which is the next one you had listed, is not the same as authoritarian. Authoritative involves motivating your team by connecting their work to a larger organization strategy, helping them understand that their day-to-day tasks lead to a bigger picture. Setting clear guidelines but not micromanaging, and that trust that you give your team tends to lead to higher employee engagement and increased job satisfaction. Pace setting, the third one, involves holding yourself and others to a very high standard. While that commitment to excellence is admirable, the pace setting approach backfires if the focus is on failure rather than success. The constant push for productivity and results can also create a pressure cooker work environment, which is also not good. It can also make it difficult for employees to see how their efforts matter, which can lead to a lower job satisfaction and increased turnover. This type particularly works well in an environment where your employees are highly motivated and exceedingly competent. So like, I think about like a law firm, like any show you've ever watched with like a law firm, they're all just like these, like doing lines and like solving legal mysteries. You know what I'm saying? But like that's not most places where you have that many like motivated individuals. Affiliative involves building strong emotional bonds, which creates camaraderie and team spirit and fosters a positive and supportive workplace. This helps team members feel like they belong, can freely share ideas and feedback, and work towards common goals. This one is especially valuable in shaping a positive work environment. The downside is that it might not provide sufficient feedback to address performance issues or deal with complex challenges. However, combining this with the authoritative and inspirational styles create way more balance and support and direction. The next one was democratic, and democratic leadership involves empowering your team to have a voice in decision making. By taking the time to gather input and listening to everyone's perspectives and concerns with feedback, you are showing your team that their opinions matter and their voices are heard and valued, which gives them a sense of ownership and responsibility. What are you laughing about?
That one doesn't exist in the military.
Most of these don't exist. How do you guys feel about this? Like, do you guys want to do push-ups, or like, what are you thinking? Yeah, no, not at all. This is democratic style is the best if you aren't sure on the best course of action and need to generate ideas. But it's not a great strategy if your team lacks experience of information or is in a time of crisis. And then the last one is coaching. Coaching is focused on individual growth. It involves dedicating time to understanding your team members' long-term goals, both for personal and professional development. It encourages your team to reflect on their aspirations and work towards achieving them, and it can help them feel more valued and motivated. This is best used during one-on-one performance evaluations, but it can also be slipped into everyday conversation. This real-time feedback helps employees grow and learn rather than letting their problems linger. So, okay, out of all of those, which style or styles resonates with you guys the most? What are you guys thinking?
For me, it would definitely be a blend between the coercive or the democratic one, what I like to call transformational leadership. I was listening to you guys' list, and I'm like, okay, where does this best fit in? And I would definitely say those two there.
Yeah. What about you, Brad?
I tried to be an authoritative leader and a whichever one you said that like tries to create bonds. You know, like the
affiliative.
Yeah, so that doesn't really work in the military either.
Like, okay, let's be real. Okay, coercive, do as I say. Yes, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Authoritative involves motivating your team. Sort of. Yeah. It's like, hey, assholes, go run 10 miles.
Yeah.
Like that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't do this,
I'm
going to make you guys do sugar cookies outside. And it's like 15 degrees. And I'm going to make you do it until I get tired. That's motivating. So that's authoritative, I suppose.
Yeah.
Pace setting does exist. Holding yourself and others to a high standard.
Yep.
It absolutely exists. Affiliative and democratic. Fuck no.
I tried. And then I have this one Marine. So it was just me and him. And he was like, yes, Corporal. Yes, Corporal. And I'm like, dude, relax. Like, calm down. Pump the brakes. Like, I'm just talking to you. Like, call me Stosiek. It's fine.
Yeah.
Dude. So the sergeant comes up, whatever, I'm not there. He says something and he goes, oh, well, Stosiek said, and he goes, what did you just say?
Yeah.
And he goes, Stosiek, dude, backfired real quick.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, I was a team leader at a very young age. Like a lot of guys, I was a fairly young age, asked to be a team leader. And then I was in a squad leader position. I was in FIT squad when we plussed up before we deployed. And so instead of the platoon sergeant acting as the squad leader, he asked me to do it as like an E4, which is not common, not really common. And so, being in that position, I didn't have the rank, but I had the respect. And so I was still able to do my job because the guys around me respected me. You know what I mean? From watching you guys, I mean, especially, I don't see the coercive with Jake so much, the do as I say type attitude. I see the democratic for sure, because that's what you're the president of the Manteno Chamber of Commerce. It's a board. You know what I'm saying? So like you are talking to other people. You're getting everybody's opinions on making a decision. I also see the affiliative in involving building strong emotional bonds. I definitely see you doing that. Pace setting, I think a lot of us do. I think if you're a leader, I think most leaders have a little bit of the pace setting. Like you're setting yourself to a high standard. I definitely see why it's not a good thing. Because because it's the first, because you're setting, like, sometimes, I think like most of us set an impossible standard. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's leading your house or being a leader in your family, being a leader at your job, whatever it is. I mean, I think it's natural for us to like pluck out something that we've seen, whether it was in the movies or in the military, whatever it was. And then you're like, oh, that's what it is. That's what I have to do. That's what I have to aspire to do. But in the process of doing that, especially if it's unrealistic expectations, you're just leading yourself to burnout. You know what I mean? That's not a good thing at all. Anyway, have you guys ever had a poor leader? We don't have to name them or the company or organization, but I have. So I'm curious if you guys have and what that story was.
So yeah, haven't we all?
Yeah.
I've had my fair share of retail jobs, especially growing up, and I would say every single one, or just about every single one, has a shitty person or a shitty team lead involved. So.
Yeah. What made them poor leaders to you?
I would definitely say probably just like that lack of how do I want to say this? That lack, not lack of hand holding, but I mean just that lack of training, if you will. It was more of the okay, this is it. Here are the keys. Good luck.
Baptism, you know what I mean? Fire.
So
yes.
That is not do that. I just think too. I mean the role itself. I mean you're working with customers. You're folding clothes all day, and it's just doing that and repeat.
Yep.
I mean it takes a wear on people, and I mean it definitely. But, you know, it affects the personality. So, I mean, those leaders, too, I mean, they were there for years and years and years. So it definitely took a toll on a lot of them. And you could see that.
Yeah. And they had more of that coercive type, do as I say mentality, which I've never. That is the fastest way for me to lose trust in you as a leader, which, again, trust is at the basis of most like relationships, to include being a leader to a team. I think it's based on trust. And if you have that do as I say, not as I do type of attitude, like I'm not going to trust you now.
Nope.
I'm not going to follow you. You know what I mean? And I always felt like too, as a leader, I think I've said this before, I feel like there's two types of respect. You have the implied respect and earned respect. Like implied respect is like, because you have this title, I will do this much. I will do like if I'm working for Jacob, I will do just enough to not get fired. I'll do just enough to not get on his radar because he's the boss. But earned respect for me is like, I'm going to do what I know he wants me to do before he asks me to do it, because I respect the shit out of him and I appreciate his leadership. So I'm going to get it done before he even asks me. Like I dealt with that a lot in the military. You know what I'm saying? The guys that I would go above and beyond for, and the guys that I'll do the bare minimum for. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Anyway, what about you, Brad? Any poor leaders?
Yeah, I have a handful.
Yeah?
Yep.
What made them so bad? Where?
I just
worst leader in the military and worst leader in the civilian world.
Oh boy.
I want to call out the military one so bad in my head, but I'm not going to.
No, I can't do that. I can't.
Mine, he was a squad leader.
Yeah.
And he was the do as I say, not as I do type of guy. He was always the dude to act so fucking tough.
Yeah.
Like he was the biggest badass all of the time. And then we got shot at. We were in our trucks and we got up a switchback and we got into a little firefight. Nothing crazy. He lost all of his military bearing in that moment.
Mm.
And he was like freaking out. And like when you get into a firefight, like the first thing you do, if you're the first vehicle or whoever to receive contact, you're going to call out over the radio, like distance and direction. Like you're going to let everybody in the team know, hey, this is what's going on, everybody. And he didn't do any of that. He just started freaking out over the radio. And again, I would give anybody a lot of grace to be put in that situation, react that way. I would never make you feel bad for that. But because he always acted like he was this tough guy, you know, and he couldn't back it up when time fucking came to it. That was like one instance of like why he was a poor leader. He would also just try to mentally destroy his teammates. The way he would talk to them. And I understand it to a degree, but it gets to that point where you're like, yo, dude, I think one of those dudes is going to shoot you. Like, you're going too far. And you see, I don't think, because in the civilian world, we have the laws and regulations and things in place, you don't see that as much. I don't know, maybe you do.
Yeah.
In the military, where you see people pushing people like it's a personal thing. You're like, yo, dude.
I had one of those guys.
Real? Was it your leader?
Yeah. While you were talking, I thought of
what is it? Tell me about it.
He just basically, on paper, he was like the perfect Marine, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like as a person,
it's a dumpster fire.
Yeah. He would like he told me one time, he's like, Stosiek, I'm going to make you PT. I was like, and I was about to get out. And I was like, you could drag a horse to the water. You can't make him drink. And he's like, you can if I beat the shit out of you.
That is the coercive type of leadership.
Maybe I'm not coercive. I don't know.
I think you sure can.
I would pay a considerable amount of money to see Jacob be half that mean to anybody.
Let's go.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, that's fair. I guess.
I want to see a video with each of these types of leaderships and like trying to use it, leadership styles, and trying to use it in the military.
Oh, dude, I don't think he could.
Waking up in the morning, like, do you guys want to go for a 5-mile run? Maybe do 1,000 push-ups or something? What do you guys think? It's whatever you guys want. You know, we'll go at like 4:30 in the morning. Yeah, I think that was my worst leader in the military, for sure. And any other leader that I've ever had that, and another reason with him too, again, he talked this huge game. He acted like he was this alpha among alphas and all this other bullshit. And we had a PT test where it was the push-up portion of the test. And he wasn't even doing like full fucking push-ups. So again, it's like, if you talk all that shit, you have to be able to back it up. Like Michael Jordan talks so much shit because nobody could touch him.
I think it's allowed.
Because he can back it up. But if you can't back it up, again, it just erodes that trust. Mm-hmm. And in the civilian world, anytime I've had an issue with a poor leader, poor management, it's always been due to trust. Like there was some drama going on or something like that, and we're not being honest, we're not being open, we're not talking about things, and that just allows problems to fester, and that destroys your team, that destroys morale. And I feel like a lot of leaders in the civilian world specifically don't understand the importance of morale amongst a team. You know what I mean? Like your morale is like this. It's not like talked about. It's not like something that's like measured. Like you have meetings about it. I don't think like not many businesses give a shit about morale.
Only when it gets to that point, I feel like.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then they do a pizza party.
Yep.
I was going to say, well, here's an idea. You're a leader. Start implementing mandatory fun days.
Mandatory. Yes. I love a good mandatory fun day. That's why we did the Here for the Mandatory Fun shirt.
Yep.
Which is one of my favorite shirts.
Yep.
But people just, and I think it's because they've never experienced what it truly feels like to be on a team, to be on a real team.
Yeah.
Being on a real team is where you have people to count on. Like if you can't perform one day or you're falling behind, you know somebody's running ahead of you to pick up the slack because you would do the same for them. Like, man, that's a good feeling. You know, that's being on a team. And you can't do that if the morale is low, if everybody's hurting because of the outside world, the inside world, what's happening in the office, whatever it is, it's that much harder if you don't have high morale. And I feel like too many leaders don't. And I'm not saying you have to focus just on that, because that goes more towards, was it like the affiliative thing, building those strong emotional bonds? I'm not saying you just have to care about that. I'm just saying you need to know that it's super important in dictating the success of your organization and the productivity and efficiency of your team, in my opinion. You know what I mean? What about the best leaders? Who are some of the best leaders either one of you guys have ever had? Can you think, do any immediately come to mind?
Yeah, I have 3. Okay. Brittany Beck being one. She was my manager at the Bourbonnais Township Park District back when I was 16 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, could take on the world.
Yeah.
She was awesome. She taught me a lot. This is what it meant to be a leader. The power of trusting your team and trusting the people that you've put in these positions to execute the roles successfully. A lot of practices and stuff that I try to push out today in the chamber. I mean, really, I lend a lot of that to her.
Yeah.
Another one, Tim Milner.
Yep.
Big
Milner
one for
Media.
sure.
Yep.
I mean, especially from the marketing and public relations side, he's taught me just about everything I know, from how to deal with people, how to talk to people, approach, what that approach is, especially from a leader standpoint, you know, and how you're approaching staff and staff meetings to how you're addressing the public. I mean, like I said, everything that I feel like I've come to know is because of him, especially today. And then another one, Stacy Barkley, fellow chamber board director there. She was my marketing manager back at Milner Media when I was there for a little while. And again, she just kind of taught me that the whole process of believing in yourself, you know, and no one else is really going to believe in you. You've got to believe in yourself for others to believe in you. And kind of gave me that confidence that I needed, I feel like, at that time to really get to where I wanted to go. So
I think another important thing, like with Stacy, so like now you and Stacy work together in a different world, right? And it's a testament, the fact when you can be a friend to somebody that used to be your leader or you were their leader, that's a testament to you both, because that means that both of you did your job. You know what I'm saying? To be able to maintain that relationship when the dynamic shifts, because it's like a lot of people also don't understand the person that you're a leader to today might be your leader tomorrow.
Yep.
You don't know that. You know, anything can happen, especially in the type of job that you're in. So like the way you treat those around you and beneath you speaks a lot about you. And when you can still have those positive relationships afterward, it speaks more volumes, in my opinion. What about you, Brad?
Yeah. 3 also stick out in my mind.
Yeah.
Sergeant Murray, Sergeant Browning, and Gunnery Sergeant Horak.
Yeah.
Yep. They are all, they were the type of leaders that would get their hands dirty. They wouldn't be afraid to jump in and I watched the Gunnery Sergeant scrub the floor once. I mean, it wasn't for very long, but I still watched it. Like it happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
What about them? What made it so that they were such a standout leader to you, though?
They didn't treat me like I was a person. Yes, I respected their rank. You know what I mean? Like I respected that they were my leader, but they didn't treat me as if they were the sergeant and I was the corporal. And we were kind of like both NCOs, you know?
Yeah.
But they were still the sergeant. They were still.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were just good dudes, man. And actually to this day, I still talk to Gunnery Sergeant Horak quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, dude. In the military, it was Staff Sergeant Morse. He was one of the best early leaders I'd ever had, because he was a squad leader for a different squad. He knew that I was kind of tasked to be a squad leader, so he kind of took me under his wing, and he made sure that he always had my back on everything. And whenever I needed assistance from like an actual person in leadership, he was right there, like always, unfaltering. He knew his shit. He wasn't, braggadocious by any means, but he was like, he was a man of his word, and we maintained our friendship after our time in service also, because he was just phenomenal, and he wasn't afraid to do the work. He had the work ethic.
Yep.
When I got in, or after I got out, as a private investigator, my manager, his name was Joe, and Joe, he worked in the office. He was my leader, but he didn't have a whole lot of experience. I think he did some PI stuff, but not much. And him and I were tasked to work special investigations together. And we opened up this new branch of the PI firm I was working at just to handle special investigations. So Joe was the dude who talked to the clients and who did all the administrative managerial stuff. And I was boots on ground. So he was my superior. And the reason why he was a phenomenal leader is because if I disagreed with him, he would listen to me, because he knew that I didn't disagree with him often, and I wouldn't complain just to complain. But if I had a serious problem and I brought it to his attention, he would stop, he would listen to me, and he would take my advice. If I was wrong, he would talk me through it. But if it was true, then we would make a change. And that was something that I definitely carried with me, because it's another thing that I see a lot of leaders, people in positions of leadership do, is they'll hear something from one of their team, and it might seem something that's easily dismissive, but to that team member, it's important. It might be something that's causing a really big issue for them. And to dismiss things when somebody on your team really is looking up to you for guidance, again, you're eroding that trust. You're making them think, oh, I don't care. My feelings don't matter, whatever. I feel guilty now for trying to bring this issue to your attention. So I'm just not going to talk to you next time. You know what I mean? And so him doing that for me, that was really huge too, I think. So yeah, I'm very lucky to have had some really good leaders in my life, and I'm very thankful for that. And also bad ones, because you learn just as much from bad leaders as you do from good leaders, because from bad leadership you learn, don't do this. Yep. I've learned all the things that I would never do. I learned a majority of the character that I think I have for those around me and those that are like, quote, under me or whatever, however you want to say it, is because I know how much I hated it when people talked down to me, when people were condescending and rude and treated me like I didn't fucking matter. I remember how much I hated that, how much I just genuinely hate ego, period. And like, you can't forget that. You know what I mean? You have to be a follower before you can be a leader, right? You have to do that.
Even when you're a leader, I think still being a follower is crucial to the people you're leading, to other leaders around you. I mean,
it's humbling.
Can't ever stop learning, you know?
And it's true. And it's so humbling in those moments. And I've noticed on a small scale with like FAT, with Project Headspace and Timing, where I'll like something that I delegated to others to handle. And then I get back into it to help them with something again. And I'm like, man, this feels weird kind of, you know what I mean? Like it's a good thing. But again, like you said, I'm back down in it now. I'm back in the trenches. Like, oh shit, I forgot how this felt. It's super important to remind yourself because you can kind of forget those things when you're on the top of the mountain. You know what I mean? So that's a great point too. So the next thing I want to talk about is the psychological demands of leadership. So before we talk about that, a story that I like, that I think I've referenced before, is the Sword of Damocles. So the Sword of Damocles is a story. It's an ancient moral parable popularized by Roman philosopher Cicero in his 45 BC book, Tusculan Disputations. The tale centers around Dionysius II, who was a tyrant who ruled over the Sicilian city of Syracuse during the 4th and 5th centuries BC. Though rich and powerful, Dionysius was super unhappy. His iron fist made him many enemies, and he was constantly tormented by fears of assassination. So one day, a member of his court, Damocles, showered him with compliments and then telling him that, you know, your life must be so amazing and so great. And Dionysius was kind of annoyed by this. So he told Damocles that since you think that, I'll let you be the ruler for the day. So Damocles was spoiled, put on this lavish like couch and given all of these servants that would wait on him hand and foot. He got the best food, best cuts of meat, fruit, perfume, everything that he wanted. And just as he was really starting to enjoy it, he noticed that there was a razor sharp sword hanging from the ceiling over his head by a single horsehair. From then on, the fear Damocles had for his life made it impossible for him to savor the opulence of the feast and the servants. Shortly after that, he asked to be excused, no longer wished to have that responsibility. So it's that idea that like when you have all of that stress and pressure and everything on top of you, it's so hard to be happy because it doesn't go away. It doesn't just go away. And I understand that more running a nonprofit because this was my first experience before I started working for FAT. I worked for CertaPro Painters, which I've talked about for one of my best friends, Rob Smith. Shout out to Rob. And Rob told me when I went over, when we came to the amicable conclusion that I was going to be leaving CertaPro and working for FAT, he was like, you know, you're starting a business, right? And I was like, no. And then I'm meeting with accountants talking about audits and payroll and budgets and all this other and I'm like, oh my God, he was completely right. He was totally right. And in that position, when you're in a position like that, any leadership position, like again, it can be in your home, whatever it is. It's not a 9-to-5 job. You can't turn it off. It's not like, okay, it's 5:00. I don't have to worry about any of this anymore. It's like, no, you worry about it all the time. You can't fall asleep because you can't stop thinking about, oh, I should have done this better. I have a new idea. I could have done this. I need to do this. Like you can't turn it off. And then you wake up in the middle of the night about it. And then the first thing you think of when you wake up sometimes is like, oh, I have an idea. Oh, I forgot to do this. You don't turn it off. Am I constantly questioning yourself? Am I doing okay? Should I be doing better? Like I think about being a parent. I ask myself that daily, multiple times a day. Am I doing the best? Can I be doing better? What can I be doing better? When you can't turn that stuff off, it's exhausting. And so I understand what the Sword of Damocles meant. Like it's so hard to appreciate, be able to enjoy that happiness when you're constantly dealing with the stress and pressure of being a leader, which can definitely lead to like burnout. You know what I mean? Have you guys felt like many mental and emotional pressure being a leader at all?
How much time do we have?
Yeah. I said we only got 3 hours. We only got 3 hours.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, you know, I think just being 26, this being like my first major like role in leadership.
Yeah.
It was a lot to take on already, you know, and you'll immediately feel those pressures of all the eyes looking at you, of comparing to what the organization is to where you want to take it. You know, I mean, like you said, Eric, I mean, it's just like the weight of the world's on your shoulders because that is your baby.
Yeah.
Which I think that makes us great leaders in that sense because we have that kind of mindset, but it can also be very self-destructive in the same sense too, because we are carrying a little too many emotions and feelings about that role, you know?
Definitely.
Trying to find that balance there too. Another kind of feeling with that, for me especially, is that trauma responsive like fawning. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, but it's more of like on that domestic relationship side, but kind of turning it over to business. It's a trauma response where you're always feeling like you are never doing enough. You have just kind of that weight on the world on your shoulders. Let me pull it up here so I'm not just reiterating the same thing over and over again.
Sounds like
but it's a people-pleasing trauma response, agreeing with others to avoid conflict, people-pleasing behaviors, difficulty saying no, suppressing your own needs and emotions for someone or something else, and then over-apologizing and lack of boundaries. So
I think it's pretty disrespectful to come on my podcast and you talk to me like that. You call me out like that.
Yeah, call myself out too. But I mean, reading that and kind of taking that dive in before being asked to come on here, I was like, holy shit, that is me to a T.
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a diagnosis for that, you know?
Right.
But I mean, that's all. I mean, real life challenges and real life struggles that I feel like I personally deal with. I think it comes into the whole imposter syndrome effect as well.
Yep.
And like all those voices and stuff inside of your head, and like trying to deter you and tell you differently. But it's just, you know, trying to overcome that and learning how to get in front of it, you know, before it becomes a problem has been huge for me, especially these last couple of years. So
mental strength, like being a leader, makes you understand the depth of what mental strength really means. Mm-hmm. The ability to have an argument with yourself in your head and really push back when you're trying to make yourself feel worse about yourself. Like you're questioning your, you know, how good you are at this, that, or the other. And like the constant stress and pressure that comes with that, to be able to persevere through that, I think is such a skill and so important. And there's so many books, which is great. There's so many books out there about leadership. And again, you got to find what works for you. You know what I mean? You like David Goggins has his book, Extreme Ownership, was Jocko Willink's book. What
is there any movies about leadership?
Spark Notes, maybe.
What are you talking about?
You said there's a lot of books.
Yes. Oh, shit. You're blind. I forget that you're blind. All right. Sorry.
A lot of great podcasts.
Podcasts.
Oh, all right.
Audible. You can listen to the books.
No, I know.
It's fine. I think when you look at and again, there's nothing wrong with any of those stories, books, movies, whatever. Like they all have great points, but experience. Mm-hmm. There are some things that just cannot be taught. And I think when you are a part of a team, few things can cause that growth through experience, like facing an adversity, facing a challenge together. And I think when you, as a leader too, when you look at hardship, you look at adversity, you look at problems, if you can make that shift mentally to like, this is a good thing, because I'm going to get to learn a lot about myself as a leader. I'm going to get to learn a lot about my people and who they really are, because we're going to face this challenge together. And if everybody can take that mentality and you make it out on the other side, you are so much stronger because of it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I don't know. Sorry. I just like blacked out for a second. Where was I at? So the mental and emotional pressures of being a leader, Jake, like you were saying, everything that you'd went through. Well, I was talking about all the different books, and then you sidetracked me because I forgot that you were fucking blind.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I think that experience, some of that stuff just can't be taught. And to be in a position where you are working, like, I draw some parallels between you and I in that you jump into, so you go from working at Milner Media to being the president and CEO of a chamber of commerce, right? So now these people that I imagine you looked at as like people that were above you are now your peers all of a sudden.
Yep.
And not only that, but you have to figure out how to work with them, how to get them to do what you need them to do without being disrespectful and condescending, because you know they're not going to take, like, people in general are going to have a hard time dealing with that, right? Like, I think of any time, and that's how I know I'm getting older, when I see somebody ascending to a position of management, and I'm like, what's that kid doing? And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm just getting older. You know what I mean? That's a hard thing to have to deal with too. And I dealt with that in the military because, again, like, I was in a team leader spot, squad leader spot, but my rank didn't reflect that. You know what I mean? So I had to be very careful. Like, I had to kind of tread lightly a bit as far as like how I was acting, because, again, I didn't have that rank. So if the other squad leaders wanted to give me shit about anything, there was nothing I could do about it. But I had to have their respect, so they would help me. And then I had to have those around me's respect because I didn't have the rank. And so it really made sure that I worked on my communication skills, because I had to make sure that I could build trust throughout my team. You know what I mean? So leadership burnout. So as Jacob had alluded to earlier, burnout is pretty prevalent in positions of leadership. There are studies that show in 2020 and 2021, manager burnout was getting substantially worse, which could have potentially led to the Great Resignation, which we talked about in our episode about toxic workplaces. But Great Resignation was where 11.5 million workers quit their jobs during April, May, and June of 2021.
Sheesh.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. So yeah, burnout. Like, I've talked about this too before, just in our area, in the world of like veteran organizations, I've watched several leaders quit, get fired, just step away from the job. Like, and it's, I understand, I get it. And there was a leader, and I'm not going to name the name, but like, there's a business owner in our community who told me at the chamber dinner that she was going to be closing her business down. And I knew how much she loves and cares about her business. And the first thing I said to her, I looked at her, and I don't know her super well. I just said, good for you. And she looked at me for a second, and she was just like, and she goes, you're the first person to say that. And I said, I know how much you care about what you do. So if you came to the conclusion that you had to close your business, end your organization, that had to have, I can't imagine how many sleepless nights you had. I can't imagine the stress and pressure and anxiety and fear and everything on your shoulders as you made this decision, because I assume you put some serious thought into this decision. So if you have the courage to tell me that you're stopping that thing, I'm going to say good for you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because like I couldn't imagine. And I feel the pressure all of the time. Now, and what do you guys feel like? So can you talk a little bit about what kind of pressure do you feel in your position with the Chamber of Commerce, if any?
Yeah, I mean, again, just feeling the pressures of making sure members are happy, right? Making sure budgets are in order, financials look good, events are up to par, and we're on track like that. But I mean, I'm someone where I take a little too many things too personally, you know, so feeling that weight there too. But I mean, also just the loneliness that kind of comes with leadership. Yeah. It's a lonely place to be. And I feel like a lot of people don't really, I mean, especially looking from the outside in, a lot of people don't really realize that or understand that, how lonely it can be, you know, but just not feeling like you can vent to anybody. And that's why I lean on Eric a lot and other chamber members in those roles of leadership, because the ones that get it,
yeah,
you know? So, I mean, for me, I'm just trying to always be that shoulder for people that I feel like, okay, yeah, I mean, I see you kind of going through it. What can I do to kind of be there as that resource for that person just to either vent to or for you to feel like you're heard? Because listen, running a business nowadays in today's current climate is not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart. So it's just like the amount of pressure that comes with that, you know, and the loneliness of feeling like it's all you. This is my livelihood, you know. I mean, there's a lot to that, and I tend to take that with me a lot and kind of resonate on it, thinking, okay, what can Jake do? What can I do to help them solve that or help them find that solution or that quick fix? And fortunately, there's not always a solution in sight or a quick fix that can happen. But I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to find that happy medium too within myself of like being that listening ear, but then also like being more of an advocate for it moving forward versus trying to be that problem solver for them or that, you know, in the meantime. But it's easier said than done.
You said a lot of really good things right there. One of them that being what you needed for others is a very important thing, just as a human being, but especially as a leader. We've all been there. We've all had bad days. We've all made mistakes. We will all continue to have bad days, and we'll continue to make mistakes. Do not forget that. Seeing somebody that's just not doing good, and you know the look because you've had it. You know what I'm saying? You're like, I know exactly what that person's going through. And I'm not going to give that person any life-changing advice. I'm just going to be like, hey, I'm here for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I've been there because the loneliness. Steve Cook, who was the CEO of Apple for I don't know how many years. That was one of the things when they asked him about what it felt like being the CEO of Apple. He was like, it's really lonely because other people, you're the only one in your position. You feel like you have to have almost like this bit of a facade of strength. You're like, because everybody's depending on you.
There's armor.
At the end of the day, everybody's depending on you. And that is a weight that's just, I don't know how else to describe that feeling. And again, if you're a father, whatever kind of position you have that's similar, like there's a lot of other things. You don't have to be a manager somewhere to understand what that feels like. That is an immense amount of weight that can just make you feel alone because you're like, man, I worry that I can't tell my team that I feel this way because it's weak. It'll make me seem weak. You know what I mean? But one thing, and I deal with that for sure also, but I've also realized as time goes on that I can delegate. I can delegate things. I can work with my team and I can be honest. Because if I'm being honest in a tactful way, not in a super negative way, you know what I'm saying? But I can still be honest enough with my team so they can help me out. They can step up if I need to step back for a second. And it builds on that trust. Because now they know that, yeah, I really do count on you. Because right now, I need to take a step back for a minute, and I need some people to help me out. And you also, again, from the leadership perspective, get to learn so much about your team and their leadership qualities. Because that's one of the best things when you yourself are a leader and you watch somebody that was on your team, someone that you mentored, whatever, become a leader. That is like a beautiful, profound feeling where you're just like, I hope I contributed anything to who you are as a leader now. You know what I'm saying? But that starts, I think a lot of that starts with just being what you needed, really. What about you, Brad? Do you feel pressures from a leadership perspective?
No, not. I mean, I feel like the only time I really lead, I mean, a big leadership is just like being a dad. So I feel all the pressures there.
Oh my God, yeah. And that never stops.
No. So I really don't manage anything or have a team. And for someone who's like part of teams around, you guys are crushing it, man. Hey, I don't know if you hear that a lot but you guys are. So
it's nice. It's nice to hear that from time to time because sometimes I think as a leader, you forget how far you've gone because you're not looking forward. You're looking down. You're looking at the next step so you don't fall. You know what I'm saying? So when somebody stops you and is like, hey, I appreciate this. You did a great job with that. You're like, oh, thank you. That refilled the tank just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I'm not letting stuff go to my head, like getting a big ego, but it's validating when you work insanely hard and do a lot of stuff behind the scenes that nobody will ever see or know. Any like validation like that just lets you know that you're doing your job. And that is another excellent quality of a leader, in my opinion, Brad. So great point. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I got him.
But like you said, though, being a dad, you're being a leader all the time. I'm constantly, like I said, I'm constantly questioning if I'm doing the best things for my kids, if I could be doing things better, if I'm disciplining enough, or if I'm not disciplining enough. You know what I mean? Like whatever the case may be. That's also exhausting. And again, I think, I don't know, this is probably going to sound terrible, but like categorically speaking, you look at like the suicide rate among like men. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I believe it's higher than women. I'm not positive. I thought it was higher. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was higher according to a study that I just completely made up. And I feel like part of that is because of some of those stresses and pressure and a lot of the issues that men have had with not talking about their feelings, feeling alone, like they can't share whatever they're dealing with. All of that stuff is completely unfair because you feel alone. You don't feel like you can talk to anybody, and you should be able to do that. So that is a lot of mental and emotional pressure that you have to deal with. How do you think leadership affects the mental well-being of those being led?
I think good, positive leadership leads to good, positive mental health.
Yeah, definitely.
You know? I mean, I feel like it's like a family dynamic. Yeah. When I was like, even now, when I'm in a really good mood, and usually the family follows my mood. If I'm in a meh mood, So I mean, I get that quite a bit.
Again, it comes down to morale.
Yeah.
You know, the way that the leader is like directly tied into how that team is. And when you see an effective leader, the team seems like they're working together, you know, a lot better. You know what I mean? Jake, would you agree? What do you think about that?
I mean, 100%. I believe that all leaders, you are that direct influence to your team, to your volunteers, to your staff, and it'll make or break it.
Yeah. Oh. And now from the self-care perspective, so since you have taken on these responsibilities and you do as much as you do, you're always going, right? How is your self-care?
Not the best, but I am working towards that. You know, therapy is good. I love going every Tuesday morning to hash it out and get a clear head. I think that's very important. And just being transparent about it too. Like, I'm having a shitty mental health day. I mean, I'm going to let you know. You'll be able to see it, but I'm going to let you know. Because we're all human, you know? I mean, I'm not a robot. Just because I'm in this position, I mean, I still have kinks in my armor, and I'm still a person. I still have those same emotions, and I have those great days. I have those crap days, but I always try to be mindful of like, okay, what I'm going into and how I am projecting is going to have a direct effect and impact on those who I'm talking to or what I'm doing. You know, so if it's a presentation and feeling like shit, the presentation is going to be like crap, you know? I mean, if I'm meeting with a bunch of kids from the high school and I'm all happy and cheery, you know, I mean, it'll directly affect them. And if they're in a crap mood, they're leaving with a smile on their face. So just being very mindful of how I am perceiving myself and how I'm projecting that outwards. But then too, for me, like as far as like practicing just better mental health, but just those better practices, like tuning into those things that make me happy, being okay with saying no to some things, not feeling like I have to show up to every single thing. Because I just worked a 12-hour day, you know, and then just still making time for those ones that matter. I mean, I love the people I get to serve. I love the community that I'm a part of, but it's like, I mean, I'm needed to still, you know, give that time to my family, to my fiance, and to those that are there cheering for me, because if I'm not there, then I mean, what does that mean for them? They're not going to be there, you know? So just trying to always be very mindful of who I'm affecting and how it's impacting them, you know? I think that's huge.
Yeah, boundaries are incredibly important. We've talked about that, I don't know, a billion times on here. But not only are boundaries important, one thing that you also said is like, knowing that it's okay to set a boundary. It's okay to say no and not guilting yourself about it. Because I do that. I still do that. I'm getting better at it. But nobody can make me feel as bad as I can make myself feel.
Yep.
And so like guilt has always been, in my opinion, like just such a self-destructing force. And so it's like, if I can't do something and now I start guilting myself about it, thinking that, oh, I'm a terrible leader, I'm a terrible dad, husband, friend, whatever it is. Like I'm terrible because I had to set this boundary. So unfair to yourself. You know what I mean? And it's just like, because that's what leads to burnout, in my opinion, just guilting yourself for things, especially those things that are outside of your control or things that you're doing to try to preserve your own self, like is a part of your self-care routine, setting a boundary, saying no. Like you cannot allow that to make you feel bad because guilt just destroys you. You know what I mean? Other than that, Brad, did you have any other thoughts on self-care as a leader?
My go-to, meditation, man.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also like that because both what you and Jake said, like being mindful, when I get really overwhelmed, I like to go take walks.
Yeah.
No music, just I'm very present. Like we've talked about Thich Nhat Hanh, his book, You Are Here. He talks about like taking a step with your left foot and saying, I'm stepping with my left foot. Taking a step with your right foot and saying, I'm stepping with my right foot, and then breathing in and telling yourself you're breathing in and then breathing out. You know what I mean? Like doing those practices, allowing yourself to be grounded is so important because it brings you back. Because I think as a leader, too many times you just let your brain go.
Yeah.
And God forbid you got ADHD or anything close to it, which I think most of us do. Like you can't turn your brain off. You're just going. You're just thinking of all of these thoughts, all of these what ifs. You're what ifing every scenario to death in your head and then trying to come up with all these contingency plans for it. And then, oh, I got a new idea for this other thing. Like you can't stop thinking about things. To meditate, to be mindful is invaluable. You have to bring yourself back every once in a while. Remember, I'm here. I'm standing on the ground. I'm sitting in my studio with my friends.
Yep.
I'm here. I don't need to lose myself in all of these thoughts because I catch myself doing it all the time. You know what I mean? So it's hard to reel yourself back in. So yeah, Dan, meditating, super important.
Yes.
Totally agree. Do you guys have any other personal stories of leadership that really stick out to you? I have a couple. Okay. I think about sports when I was in high school. Right? You think about like the best coaches you've ever had. The best coach I've ever had, his name was Coach Hall. And he was in Herscher High School.
Oh yeah, Coach Hall. I know Coach Hall.
Love Coach Hall. Here's why I love Coach Hall. Coach Hall was short, jacked, and he was like so energetic all of the time, right? When I was playing football. And he was always out there and he would yell at you and get in your face. But if he was yelling at you to do push-ups, he would drop down right next to you and knock out every push-up. Perfect. Right there with you. If he was yelling at you to run, he's running with you. Everything. And like, dude, you see that and you're like, oh man, all right. Like I can't let him outwork me. You know what I'm saying?
Compete.
Like, dude, that set the tone when I was in high school as far as like, dude, and don't get me wrong, we had other coaches and the other coaches were great for different reasons, but that really stood out to me from like a leadership perspective. Like when I see somebody out there doing the work, I'm like, man, I don't want to let that person down. Like I'm a little competitive in that sense. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that one was huge to me. Also, it's similarly, when I was in, so we had a first sergeant when we first deployed to Afghanistan, and he was assigned to our unit. He came from a Ranger battalion, and he gets tasked to be the first sergeant of a National Guard unit. Okay. So if you're unfamiliar what that means, imagine, it's going to sound so shitty. Imagine being like a CEO, like a Fortune 500 company. And they're like, all right, you are now going to manage trying to think of a business, and it's not going to be like super disrespectful. Like now,
a Long John Silver.
You are now the night shift manager
yes.
at Long John Silver's.
Yes,
you're just going to be like. I feel like that's how he felt. He did not want to be there. I don't think he wanted to be our first sergeant fucking at all. Again, like he's coming from this hard charging Ranger battalion. Dude had combat experience, whole nine. And like, I don't think he fucking liked us at all. So one night we visited a local drinking establishment. Okay. We were mobbing out of Fort Bragg. We got a little too drunk. Okay. And there was a fight that broke out. So actually this is 2 leadership stories in one. First is a leadership story about me and one of my best friends who told this story at my wedding. And I don't know if I told this story on the podcast yet. His name's Tim Williams. He's a police officer in Chicago, and he's the godfather of my kids. I'm the godfather of his kids. And if you've ever seen Police Academy, there's a character called Officer Hightower, who's like an 8-foot tall Jack Black dude who looks like a professional football player. That's Williams to a T. Like everybody thought he was a Chicago Bear, like he was a giant dude. So people were always picking fights with him. So we're at Fort Bragg. We're in the World War II barracks or whatever, Civil War barracks, whatever you call them. And it's late at night. We get back from this bar. We'd been drinking. We're walking to our barracks. There's another building over here, another set of barracks. And there's some guys standing around and they see Williams and they start talking shit because he's a big dude. And everybody liked talking shit to him because he was huge. And Tim turns around and like he starts walking over there like he's going to do something about it. Now, at the time, I am his acting squad leader. Okay. So I get in front of him. I'm like, hey, dude, look at me. Don't look at them. Chill. We need to get back inside and go to bed. And Williams is like, okay. He turns around. Half of a brick comes through the air, hits him in the back of the head. He turns around. I get out of his way. Because I'm like, yo, I'm not getting in front of that. He makes a beeline towards this group of guys. There was like 8 to 12 guys standing that this half a brick came from, and they're ready to throw down. I was initially outside with like probably 20 some guys of our platoon. I look back as Williams is running into this fight. I look back and almost every single one of them ran away. They ran into our barracks because they're like, nah, dude. And I saw Williams running into the fight and I just said, all right. And I ran into the fight with him. Like I fully anticipated getting my ass kicked. I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die before I deploy like a jackass. And everyone's going to make fun of me. But my guy was in there. I can't let him be in there alone. I don't care what that means for me, but I'm not going to let him be alone in that. And so I see somebody holding Williams up against the wall. I grab him. I throw him up against the barracks. And it's our lieutenant colonel. And he goes, Peterson, get over there. And I'm like, no. And he got, so I knew that I was screwed. I was made, like, now I'm going to be in so much trouble. So that was the first leadership story. Williams told that at my wedding because, like, I refused to let him be alone. And from that day, even though we were close before then, he always had my back and I always had his back. Like the amount of trust we have for each other is fucking, it's there. You know what I'm saying? So our first sergeant, who I was talking about before, it is his job to now punish us for what we've done. It is roughly 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And the first sergeant makes us do a 5-mile run all around Fort Bragg in the middle of the night. The first thing he said to us was, he goes, Peterson, get your medic. And I'm like, no, you don't do that unless we're going to need our medic because one of us is going to fucking die. So I had to go get my medic. We went on a 5-mile run at like 3:34 in the morning. And the first sergeant was with us the entire time. He did the entire run with us. And then we were all starting to we were hurting because we were still drunk. And first sergeant looks over us and he goes, don't worry, boys, I'm drunk too. And after that moment, I was like, you know what? You might hate us, but I respect the hell out of you, man, because he did all that stuff. So again, it's like, I think about when all of my stories that involve a really good leader involve a leader that could back it up, that stepped up, that did what needed to get done. You know, it's so easy to sit back and let others do the work, but to show that, no, I'll lead this charge. I will do as many push-ups as you. I will do whatever work you're doing. I know how all this works. Like, it gives you so much faith, and it is inspirational, I think, especially when you need that motivation as a follower, as a member of a team. When you see your leader taking that charge and it gives you that confidence, you know we're all working towards that goal, and it makes you feel that much better. And I think it's also empowering at the same time. Can you think of a situation that has taught you a lot as a leader?
Yes, but I don't know. You want me to elaborate on it, or just a yes or no? 'Cause, I mean, I don't know. I guess you want to go first so I can think about how I can elaborate.
Oh, man.
What do you got, Brad?
I don't.
So I'll start.
Sure.
My first one was becoming that team leader. Well, and being put in a squad leader position at the ripe old age of 20. I think I was 20. And knowing I'm about to go to Afghanistan. I'm in an infantry platoon. Like, the likelihood of us getting shot at or whatever is pretty good, I think. And I have to bring these guys overseas. I have to be the one that they look up to and lean on. And I have to make sure that they come back. And like, that weight, dude, was so overwhelming for me at first. You know, being a young leader, you know, it was just, I was scared. I had no experience. I didn't think I had any experience. I probably didn't. And that in and of itself was very much, like, that taught me so much, because I learned so much from my mentors. I learned how important mentors were. I learned how important relationships are, how important communication is, how important trust is, because I was just thrust into it. I didn't read any books. It was just experience. You know, baptism by fire. Here you go. Here's your guys. You guys are going to Afghanistan. Figure it out. Like that taught me so much. And then again, running Project Headspace and Timing, working with veterans, period. That taught me so much, because I learned that I have to work with, to be a leader means you have to do your best to work with pretty much every type of personality and character there is. You have to be a master, like, puzzle piece assembler. Like, you're looking at these people that are different for so many different reasons that could clash so easily. And you have to figure out, like, how we can make them all work together. Like, because I'm a big advocate of that. Like, I'm a big advocate of what stands in the way becomes the way. That thought process, Marcus Aurelius, right? And so it's like, whatever problem there is, like, I refuse to believe that we can't think of a solution as a team to get through it. You know what I mean? And being given those opportunities, I think really taught me a lot in terms of that. Also, when I worked for CertaPro. So when I worked for CertaPro, it was very interesting, because at one point I was a production manager. So I was over our supervisors that did all the painting and carpentry and drywall and things like that. But the thing was, I didn't have experience doing their job. Yet now I'm in a position of leadership over these people who know that I haven't done their job. So automatically I feel like I'm working uphill. And the way that I was able to build the trust and relationships with those guys is I spent time doing what they were doing. Like, I would go out to their job sites and be like, hey, put me to work. Give me that low totem pole shit. What do you need me to do? You want me to go and mask stuff off, clean, whatever? Like, I'll do it. You tell me what to do. I earn their respect by doing that. And then responding, again, dealing with adversity, dealing with problems together, and then talking it out with them, not just trying to make a decision without consulting them, because I know that they have a lot of experience that's very valuable to making the conclusion of how we should handle the situation. So over years, we built a very close relationship, and I learned how important it was to do what Jacob had already said. Like, every once in a while, you got to get down in there. You have to do what everybody else is doing. You have to let them know that you're still here to get your hands dirty. You know what I mean? So I think those situations taught me a lot. What do you guys think of anything?
Yeah, so like for me, especially, I mean, since this is a newer, I mean, like I said, this is year 2 right now for me. But kind of looking and seeing what's going on around me, kind of taking and pulling information from that and knowing what not to do, I think has been huge for me.
Yes.
Learning through others, good and bad. I think that's huge. Allowing myself that grace to mess up and be okay with it and have others be okay with it by seeing it. That's been huge, and just letting the people lead it, you know. I don't know, it's something I always try to remind myself that I don't have to have all the ideas, I don't have to know everything, but to surround yourself with the right people that know about those different things. I think that's what it means to be a leader.
Yeah.
You know, to pull that team together, to pull those minds and those different missions and objectives together to make something of it, you know. That's been huge for me.
Definitely. Brad? Meditation.
Yep.
Also still great.
Now again, I haven't had a whole lot of leadership roles. I'm more of just a follower, and I don't know.
You can still learn a ton as a follower
and
from
I do.
your leaders. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you brought up instances in the Marines again where you had leadership that did something that you maybe didn't agree with, and it still taught you quite a bit from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if there was something in particular that really taught you the most. Because really, it's like every experience you have in a position of leadership or as a follower with a leader teaches you something.
Yeah. I learned how to talk to people and not talk to people in the Marine Corps, actually. In the one instance, so the time, the story I talked about earlier where the kid had called me Stosiek instead of Corporal Stosiek, the mass sergeant actually called me into his office, and oh boy. It was, dude, I'll never forget it. It was so bad, the staff sergeant that brought me in went to the position of attention.
Damn.
Yeah,
okay.
This dude, he was like, man, if I had a button to erase shitbags like you out of my Marine Corps, I would hit it 80 times a day, and you're just a worthless piece of shit. And I was like, good to go, Mass Sergeant.
That's called the coaching style of leadership. Yeah. One-on-one support.
Yeah. So I learned how to just like, people are people, and you don't talk to people like that. And I mean, dude, I felt like such a worthless, all because I was trying to relate and make life easier. Because for some reason, when you get stationed in Okinawa as a junior Marine, it's horrible. All the rules and all the, you know what I mean? So I was trying to make it easier for these Marines so they didn't have to be all like, God, this sucks.
Well, and for people to have that coercive, do as I say, not as I do, or whatever mentality, I hope that that's something that's dying out. I feel like it was a leadership skill we used to see more of with the previous generations. And it's not a dig at them. I think they were put into that position because of their environment and circumstances. And so it required them to have that type of leadership style. But now that's not the case, I don't think. And the only people that I still see outside of that have that type of mentality are like entitled people.
Yeah.
Where you never had to do the grunt work.
Yep.
You were always in a position of leadership. And again, and that's not a dig at them saying that they can't be good leaders. But I've noticed that when I had a poor leader, it was somebody that maybe necessarily did not work from the bottom up, did not try to get the experience or learn about any of that, felt entitled. And then because of that, they just felt like they were better than you. And they were going to let you know that. You were going to feel that way every time they talked in that arrogance.
That should be like part of a college degree, I feel like.
What, leadership?
No, that and like experiencing, like, because there's some degrees where you just, like, officers, for example.
Yeah.
They don't know what like boot camp is like, and you know what I'm saying?
Most don't.
Yeah.
The enlisted that go the officer route.
Yes.
Those guys are like unicorns.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? But yes, I agree. Most officers have the book smarts and not the rest. And you definitely see a lot of that entitlement. I mean, I did. Yeah. I saw some of that entitlement for sure. And these guys that think that they know what they're doing and they're commanding a platoon, but they didn't have the experience.
Dude, we had an officer. He was in charge of the chow hall. He was a pilot.
Yeah.
Really cool guy. Except he wanted us to make eggs Benedict every morning.
Wow.
And I was like,
That's
dude.
fancy. Marines, man. You guys get to eat good, I guess.
I was like, do you know what eggs Benedict? So we sat in the back and he was with us as we tried to poach one egg.
Tried
at a time. Like,
one egg.
For how many did you have to cook for, roughly?
It didn't. He's like, you know what? Maybe it's not a good idea.
No, but how many Marines on average did you have to cook food for at once?
Anywhere from, I don't know, like 300 maybe, 200-300.
Okay, yeah, so you're gonna sit here and poach 300
eggs. I'm gonna poach.
Like,
you're crazy. You're out of your mind. I'm like, dude, you go fly your planes. Like, we got this.
That's why in the Army your eggs come out of a carton. And you're like, those aren't eggs, but you're going to eat them and you're going to be happy about it.
Hey, man.
Yeah. So as far as advice for young and aspiring leaders, what advice would you give to a young and aspiring leader?
I would definitely say pinpoint that person in your life that you look up to and shadow.
Yeah,
I mean,
mentors.
I always think you are who you surround yourself with.
Definitely.
Surround yourself with them from a young age and keep growing, keep learning, and keep being willing to learn too. I mean, you can find new leaders that, you just met, or new people that are just emerging. I think it makes you more of a well-rounded person in the end, both in leadership and both just day-to-day life,
You have to know your weaknesses, and you can't run from them because it's going to come up and bite you in the ass. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like, know what they are. And if you can't everybody should always work on themselves, but like, find those people that supplement your weaknesses. Find those people that help balance you out. If you're introverted, you find that extroverted person, or vice versa. Like, find that balance. Don't expect yourself to be the one that does everything and knows everything.
Yep.
And I always, pretty much always respect if somebody tells me that they don't know something. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Oh yeah, I almost forgot that you were a human being, and that it's possible that you might just not know some shit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's totally fine. I always respect somebody when they do that. And I also think too, in a leadership position, one of the harder things too, depending on your team and things like that, is like, you're not always going to be the hero. Sometimes you have to be the villain. And that can also be like, that the decision that you have to make isn't the one that's going to make people happy, but it's the one that needs to get done. It's the one that has to get made. And you have to have the intestinal fortitude to know that despite the fact that they're going to disagree with this, and I know that I can explain it and back it up to make sure that they understand, because I need them on board, that like, I'm not always the hero as a leader. And that sometimes is a very hard thing to deal with. And I think from a position of like being a dad, like disciplining your kids, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to discipline your kids. You feel like the villain, and it hurts. Like, and I one thing I do as a dad a lot is like, if I do have to punish my kids, especially if it's like a severe punishment, like they're grounded for a while, or I yell or whatever, then I'll sit down with them afterwards and I'll talk to them like, do you believe that I want to do this? Do you think I want to punish you? Do you think I enjoy punishing you? Like, it hurts me to have to be the bad guy. I don't want to have to be the bad guy. I don't like being the bad guy. And a lot of parents say that type of stuff to their kids, I think. You know what I mean?
And that's when mom comes in.
And then mom comes in. And I'll let mom be the bad guy.
Yep. No, I'm just kidding.
What about you, Brad? You got any advice?
Yes. My advice would be to listen.
Yep.
Right. Because like you said earlier, you don't know it all, and you could learn a lot from just having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one. And I forgot what the third one was, but it was good. I promise. But
the third one is write stuff down. That was what the third one.
That was the third one. Yes.
Yeah. Both of those were all. Yeah. You always have to stay humble.
Yeah.
Ego kills.
Being in that position of leadership means you're always going to be humbled. Something's always going to happen, and it's going to humble you, especially if you start to get an ego about something.
And that just reminded me what I was going to say.
Boom.
Always continue to grow. Like, don't ever stop thinking you're where you need to be.
Right.
So
you can always do better. Practicing continuous improvement is a very important thing for sure. And that's why having mentors is so important.
Yes.
because they help you with that. Like, and I love, just like Jacob had mentioned, I love having mentors because it gives me people to like bounce ideas off of. And then from the leadership perspective, I don't feel as alone. And then I get your input. And like one of my mentors, he was the former CEO of Road Home at Rush. Like he ran this phenomenal program up at Rush Hospital to help veterans with PTSD, mental health, substance use issues, and more. And like he was always there to talk to me. He would always check in on me. And if I ever had a thought about something, like I'd want to call him. I'd be like, hey, I'd send him a text. Hey, can I talk something out with you really quick? And that's why whenever anybody sends me a message like that, I'm like honored. You know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, you give a shit about my opinion, like at all? Like, wow. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I don't take that lightly because it took a lot for me to reach out to a mentor of mine and be like, hey, can I talk something out with you? And then I would talk it out with him and he would be like, hey, I've dealt with something similar to that. And you're like, whoa, really? Because for whatever weird reason, sometimes you just think that you're the only one that's experienced whatever you're experiencing. You forget that other people could have the almost exact same experience. And so again, it taught me so much. And so having good mentors is always been something that's important to me and never stopping the learning experience, like always trying to learn. You know what I mean? So that was a very good one. Other than that, does either one of you guys have any other thoughts? Anything else you wanted to say about leadership?
Just
meditate.
Just meditate.
All day, baby.
Just do it.
Well,
see, like I feel like, and you guys, I feel like when you're like, oh, I don't meditate, I can't do it, because I didn't realize how much like you go through as a leader. So like, no shit, you can't sit and like turn your brain off. Like that's probably pretty hard for you. I'm assuming it's pretty difficult for you as well.
It's very hard for me.
Yeah. You know what I do all day? Dude, I watch Bluey quite a bit. Kids or no kids.
Pretty solid.
Just saying.
Well, that's the best though, when you're watching a cartoon, like a kid's cartoon, and your kids aren't there, and you're like, oh, wait.
Wait a second.
Yeah, but Bluey's solid though.
It is a good one.
Bluey is a great cartoon to watch.
It is.
But yeah, I mean, it is hard for me to meditate. There are lots of times where I have hard time sleeping because, again, man, you don't, it's not something you turn off. Like the definition said earlier, it's not something that you are, it's something that you do. And it's just always there. Like as a leader, you're never the best. There is no such thing. So you're always thinking about that. Who am I letting down? And how am I letting them down? How can I be doing better? What am I forgetting? Do I have a member of my team that I haven't engaged with in a long time? And they might think I don't care about them anymore because I haven't talked to them. Like it's never ending. Like I started as a technique to keep myself on track. I had a notebook and I would write down all the things that I had to do and that were on my mind. And for me, that actually added to my anxiety because, dude, I got several pages deep and I'm like, yo, I don't like looking at all this stuff, man. Like it makes it too real. I don't like this. So I stopped doing it. Like that's what it's like in my head all the time. You know what I mean? Anyway, so other than that, Jacob, I just wanted to thank you again for being here, my friend.
Thank you, guys. It's been great.
Yep, absolutely. And if anybody wants any more information on the Manteno Chamber of Commerce, where could they go?
You can check us out at mantenochamber.com, or if you feel like it, you can send me an email at jknox@villageofmanteno.com.
Very good. So again, we talked a little bit about the definition of leadership, the different types, psychological effect of leadership, burnout, ways to mitigate that burnout, and advice for aspiring leaders. So until next time, thank you so much for listening, and we hope that we helped you go from being freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to truly being fine about being a leader.